So now I want to talk a little bit about teaching and learning. What happens with teaching and learning in a world completely dominated by generative AI? And this is very simplistic. In fact, I've done a couple workshops about these four, but these what I see are the biggest nudges that are likely to deal with generative AI in an evolved way in the classroom. The first one is what you may have heard of before. It's been a higher ed process that is now making its way into K-12. It's about slow teaching or small teaching processes, which is we need to decrease the width of our knowledge and increase the depth of our knowledge. And process is much more important than products. I think the easiest way to describe this is the junior high school English class that writes essays on the Great Gatsby. We don't assign essays to students because we really need another 150 hot takes on the Great Gatsby, right? It's not about the product. And in fact, very little of what we do is about product that is out there to make a point. Yes, maybe in your more aggressive studies or in more independent learning environments, sure, but most learning is about the process, and focusing on that has to be where we go here. And also a bunch of assignments that all do the same thing or meet the same targets is going to be much more prone to students opting to AI than it is if we're focusing on smaller numbers of assignments that go greater in depth. And I have to say, that goes against what I know about good teaching over the last 30 years, but that doesn't mean that AI is going to allow us to do what we know, right? And in fact, if anything, it's going to challenge us pretty dramatically. Second, teaching and learning with why at the center of everything. 30 years ago, it would have been considered disrespectful to ask someone, why are we doing this, right? And usually if it was asked in a snotty way, that is a little disrespectful. But the bottom line is that there is some suggestion that we were very thoughtful about telling students the why of the assignment or what we're learning or what I'm trying to do. It gets not only more engagement buy-in, but it explains why you would want to make a choice to not use an AI tool to do it for you. It's not about the product, it's about the process. Media and data literacy has never been more important. The NPR story that President Biden referred to this morning also noted that the internet's getting eaten up by generative AI websites, right? They're now going to the top of Google, which means our traditional strategy of vetting things by Google will be somewhat less useful in the upcoming years. This notion of helping any student of any age understand that your eyes are no longer that important, that you have to dig on everything. The facts can be very subjective. We've known that for some time, but if we're not putting it at the base of almost all of our research, almost all of our critical thinking and questioning of the world, that has to be that now. And of course, assessment practice in a world where you can right-click your way to an objective test. Now, to be clear, generative AI is just as good at not objective assessment than it is of objective assessment, but we're going to have to reformulate some of our thinking and theories about how we assess students and how we look at progress. I hope that there is some magic tools at some point that do some of the hard work for us. But in the end, what we know from distance education over the last 20 years is that students don't like feeling like they're alone in the world. Right? They don't want to go to YouTube to learn something because learning is inherently social. The best distance learning environments have a lot of interaction between teacher and student and student and student. And that's going to be that much more important in a world where a lot of teachers and professors can do this work by simply right-clicking the answer and having it generate feedback. The whole notion of cheating is probably going to change pretty dramatically. I like this graphic from Google expert Matt Miller about how it's probably not about yes or no. There's a lot of middle ground here, everything from using AI to help you with your citation page, to helping you write an outline, to have it edit your essay, to have it spell check and use grammar assistance. That is all questions we're going to have to answer for our students. And borrowing from my alma mater, this is credit to Rachel Martin from Carroll College for this. This is where the faculty was at Carroll in August, that they were adding this notion, yes, no, maybe, for AI into assignments. We've adapted that at my home institution to green, yellow, red to make it a little clearer for the younger student. But it's going to get to a point where every assignment, we're going to have to be really clear about that. Yes, you can use AI here. No, you can. Or if you have an idea for using AI that I'm not covering here, let's talk about it. Let's make it a conversation and not just assume that it's a good idea or bad idea to use a generative AI tool. The takeaway from this, and I think this is very true, that flexible student-centered learning has never been more important. It's what is really being talked about by policymakers right now. Unfortunately, the guidance is not as clear as I would like it to be about exactly what that means, but AI is going to force these conversations like nothing we've seen or experienced before. I also think we need to be really careful about knee-jerk reactions to this technology. And 2023, in a lot of ways, was examples of knee-jerk reactions. Detecting AI, and I guarantee right now, if you're in any sort of administrative role, you can go find 25 emails right now from a company that promises you they can detect generative AI. And I'm here to tell you, all of the meaningful data from 2023 that's not someone trying to sell you something says that we cannot reliably detect artificial intelligence output. And worse, a lot of people are running around saying that, well, they can tell when it's AI generated. And to be clear, I've seen that myself, right? You're not writing towards the answer. It's the first time you wrote anything that was a complete sentence all semester. Yeah, you probably did use AI at that point, right? But if you're talking about, well, there's no, and I've literally seen a post on LinkedIn about this, that, well, I can tell because there's no spelling errors. Well, okay, first of all, what's our standard in 2024, right? If that's our standard, like if you didn't spell something wrong, obviously it's AI generated. But also, you're telling your best students and your best writers that their output must be AI generated. And I've seen story after story after story in both higher ed and K-12 education of people making a big blustery accusation about students using AI, and they were proven incorrect, right? That doesn't endear students to formal education environments to start with. It looks terribly to our constituents outside of those that we're serving in an educational context. And more importantly, it is not acknowledging of the fact this technology is everywhere, and generally speaking, we can't tell. Second, banning it, I think it's just silly. That's more aimed at K-12 because they have things like content blocks on a lot of district internet systems. But more importantly, assuming that if you ban it, it means anything is not true, as I showed you earlier. It's literally everywhere, right? Everyone is selling an AI tool now. Ignoring is also foolhardy, I think. And then this is probably the one I think is most dangerous. We don't need to teach students to learn what AI can do for them, as in teaching kids about writing is about the product. Well, of course it's not. We teach writing because it's a critical thinking skill. And just because AI can do it for you doesn't mean we should let AI do it instead of the critical thinking process. And if anything that I think is dangerous, it's that one, right? Well, we know we'll just not teach that anymore because AI will do it for you. No, I think that's pretty darn silly. The big takeaway is that quick fix solutions will not bring us the answers that we're looking for. And conversations like today are really important because there's no expert guidance on this yet. And in a lot of ways, we are going to have to create the expert guidance ourselves.